Every single day, people take unwanted or unused items to thrift and antique stores across the country. But as the saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and we're here to prove it. Identify valuable things before you throw them away. Join us as we show and tell of treasures found and sold by a full-time reseller with the hopes of helping you find some treasures of your own. Welcome to the What's Sold podcast.
Welcome to the What's Sold podcast. Or should I say, willkommen to the What's Sold podcast for our German listeners.
Sure.
I like German listeners. The truth is, I don't know if you've traveled much in Europe, but it's always interesting for the first time an American goes over there and they try to speak their, ninth grade German class German to them, and they're like, "Okay, dude, what do you want? I speak English. Let's move on."
Yeah.
Like, hey,
we are so
English.
lucky as Americans to have our, I say our, it may not be your first language if you're an American. But for a lot of Americans, English is your primary language. And to be able to go around the world and that be the most common language that is shared, it's helpful for everyone. I mean, people who, say, come from countries that neither country English is their primary language, to be able to travel themselves and meet someone else to have sort of a unified language is helpful for sure. But we've also traveled to places like some rural spots in Italy where nobody spoke English, and we did our best. They were laughing a lot at us, which they should.
In Italy, just remember, destra e sinistra, right or left. That's all you. A più e meno, or they're like five words in Italian that are key. Allora, that said, like, okay, all right, let's do this. It's so funny. Yeah, I went to study Italian because my family of origin is from Italy. My dad didn't speak any English until he was like 7 years old. So I wanted to learn Italian, and I studied for like 7 years in Siena, not full every summer because I was a teacher.
Wow.
I could do that.
Yeah.
And it's really funny how when you're learning a language, it's so humbling when you're learning a language as an adult. And Italian is such a beautifully lyrical language, but it has lots of slang. So it's just really, really funny. The Italians and their slang, as they say. So anyway.
That's great.
So how was the week? I know it's like our first kind of couple weeks back into the wonders that is the 2025s. I'm very excited to be starting a fresh new year. I feel like 2024 was rough. And it's nice to turn I don't even care about turning the page of like New Year's resolutions per se, but it's nice to turn the page and start fresh.
Yeah, for those who don't remember or didn't hear, we live in Western North Carolina, so Hurricane Helene came through and really wrecked things up. So, the last 3 months have been, it's been a journey for sure. And that's coming from someone who did not get heavily affected like a lot of my community did. But to me, it felt like the year went really quickly, and it was kind of a whirlwind, here at the end. But with basically since Thanksgiving and through the December, the sort of the chaos that can come with holidays and just change of schedules, it feels a lot like summer feels for me, which is kids are out of school, but we've got them in different things. And so every week seems like a different week. You never can seem to fall into a routine. And I do much better, which I think a lot of people do if you have a routine that you can stick to, that you're not interrupted. And, whatever. I do my best. I fly by the seat of my pants and try to make it work whenever we have sort of the off weeks, which, last week kids are out of school. This week the kids are out of school. So trying to get work done in between. But it's been good. Got to spend holidays with the family. How about yourself? Was that all right for you guys as
funny.
well?
Through the miracle of podcasting, we actually record a week before we drop our show. So we're just on the very tail end of the holidays. So this show will drop in the second week of January.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just into January, and it's I feel exactly the same way. In fact, in our pre-production meeting, Matt and I were talking about the fact that running your own business or owning your own business, which I'm assuming a lot of our listeners are, you never quite feel like you're done. You really have to have self-discipline to say, I'm going to stop, especially around the holidays, in my opinion, when you have kids, because, your kids are like, I went to the retrocade with my daughter and some of her friends yesterday where they played loud video games and screamed, and I got a headache. Nothing against video games. I love video games, but being in a space with lots of ringing noises and screaming kids is not my. In fact, that's Dante's 6th level of hell for me. If that was like, that's what I would be in, and I would get to hell, and that would be it.
Dante clearly hadn't had kids yet by the time he wrote that. Just kidding.
No, when he wrote the Inferno, there were no kids or video games, or that would have been included, I assure you. No, I find it's sort of the word I would use is malaise. That's a fancy word for basically saying sort of indulgent. You're just like, I don't know. It's just, it feels, you're like you said, being in a routine makes you feel like, oh, okay, I got to do this. And so I have to force myself to get into a different routine for a couple of days. I keep lots of lists of things I need to do, but I also have this little white eraser board, or like a little chalkboard almost, but it's a marker. And I write on the things that I want to get done that day. I start the day, I have a clear slate, and I just write down the 4 or 5 things that I have to get done that day. That's very helpful for me if I want to stay on sort of, if I look at my day. The other thing that I do in the holidays is I actually get up earlier so that I can work. I started working this morning at 6 a.m. East Coast time because I wanted to knock out a lot of work before my daughter got up so that I could go and spend the day with her and hang out. We're going to go for a bike ride and do fun things. But I think that's the kind of stuff you have to do when you work for yourself, or especially when you work at your home. You and I both work at home, sort of. We're out and about a lot. But when you work at home, you have to really delineate between work and family, or at least I do. So I don't know. Do you find that same thing?
Trying to find the balance?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and as you mentioned, you said, and that was correct. You said we work from home, kind of. And it's true, we do work from home, but sometimes we don't, because our work has no boundaries really at all. We don't have to be in a certain spot to do at a certain time. And that's good and bad, right? Because it's good that we have the freedom to kind of move around, but bad because any boundaries that are there are ones we have to set for ourselves. And early on, that was not easy for me because I'll jump in and I hit it hard and I work. And, that is a balance that my spouse has to help me with, still reminding me like, hey, this is family time,
Yeah.
This is that. And it's not that I don't want to be there for my family. I do all of this for my family, but the bleed over there, it's you get what you put into it. And so, well, I want more for my family, therefore I have to put more time in, but I have to be careful because I don't want my kids to grow up being like, well, Dad was, he was around, but he wasn't really there. That's a fear of mine, but.
Yeah. And one of the things about, and we're going to do a show on this at some point, is about sort of the social media or the electronic presence of your business. And, for a lot of people, that means like, do they keep an updated Facebook page? If they're on Etsy, if you look at eBay, you've got to basically make sure that your listings are correct. There's a lot of electronic stuff that gets done for all of us that are trying to do any kind of business, and reselling is absolutely no different. It's just you're really kind of keeping track of that. And I find that is something that can be a challenge if you're a creative type. You're a creative type. You do Rusty videos. You do all these different things. But that's not actually your main business, per se. It would be great if it was, but ultimately those are all little pieces of time that are taken away. They're important, or you think they might be important. The worst thing ever in any business is the fact that we spend a lot of time on things that turn out to be not that important, but we do them because we're not sure.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And there's lots of things that I know I could do. When you were mentioning social media, I mean, I could be putting stuff on TikTok and on Instagram and on all of these new, whatever the new, the hottest, new
Blue Sky.
Yeah, all of these. It's like I could be posting stuff on there every day. Now, how much time does that take? If I'm taking that time to do something that is not necessarily going to translate to income, I'm taking time away from activities that I know would.
Exactly.
And at what point does that make, how long do I have to do that before I actually see the gains? I mean, I did Rusty videos for over 2 years before I ever saw any money from that. And so you think about the countless hours I put in. I had essentially a part-time job for 2 years with the amount of time I put into it, with no guarantees. And there's still no guarantees with it. So you're absolutely right. Sometimes you're just kind of blindfolded throwing darts, hoping something sticks, but sometimes I also don't even let myself go down that rabbit hole because it's not worth the risk. Because, I need to make money. I know how to do that. I know the tasks that will, and sometimes I'm willing to take the risk for the hopes that it will pay off, but other times I'm not.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good point about, and we're gonna talk about that on a show, is sort of looking, there's no exact science to it. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's some MIT grad out there that's created an algorithm for really big companies to know how much time to spend on things. But for you and me, and for most of our listeners, it's like, well, should I spend 2 hours on Facebook every day? Or should I spend this extra time that there's no guarantee it's going to pay off? But that said, if you don't do it, there's an absolute guarantee that it's not going to pay off.
For sure.
So it's sort of this idea that where do we pick our spots? I was talking to my brother, who I've mentioned on the show. He's set up a little golf shop for himself, and he just really wants the golf shop to pay for his golf. He's retired, lazy bum, and he just wants to play golf. And so he's got this great little secondary golf shop that he set up. But he was talking about, it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't know how much time to spend, because he's retired.
Yeah.
It's like, do I want to spend, do I want it to be a full-time job? If I did, I could probably make more from it. But his entire goal is to just make enough money to pay for his green fees, and so that his wife doesn't get mad at him when he's spending all this money playing golf. And it's just an interesting, when we run those numbers in our head about where to spend time. You and I are different. This is how we pay for our mortgages and our life, and you are fully committed to, this is it. You've got to go out. If you don't go out and hustle, nothing happens. And the same thing goes for any small business owner. If you don't hustle, it doesn't happen. So
that's right.
I guess the theme of 2025 should be, how do we make sure that our hustle pays off? Maybe that's the goal of the year.
That is the golden question, because if you have any ambition at all as a business owner, you're thinking all the time about, how do I make this better? And it doesn't have to be, by the way, it doesn't have to be based on income. That's a very capitalist Western thing, is to determine your value or based on how much you earn. There's a lot to be said for having other goals in mind. Obviously, money has to be a part of it, because we do this to make funds to pay for our life. But I don't know. I'll be interested to see how 2025 goes. I'm still enjoying this. I'm learning a lot. So as long as that's the case, and I'm able to make enough to help provide my portion of what our family needs, then that's awesome. And if another opportunity arises, I've always got thoughts, the wheels are always turning about what else I could do, or take these skills and do something in addition to this. But I can't predict the future. I mean, I never thought I'd be doing this. So
yeah, exactly. It's, if you said, 5 years ago, I'm going to be selling a full-time reseller with vodcasts and podcasts, you're like, what are you talking about? So yeah, it is crazy. All right. So let's get to the stuff that the people really want to hear, which is, what, if anything, did you sell this week?
Go
ahead.
Do you mind if we flip the script a little bit today and actually do that at the end? We can end with that.
What?
And this time, let's talk. You and I talked pre-production about discussing the photography element when it comes to listing things online. And so, let's talk about that for a moment. And I have a lot of things. Are you
doing a new paradigm shift on the show? Are we switching?
Just shaking it. Let's just shake this up.
This is kind of stuff that Rusty does when he
shaken
keeps
or
pizzas
stirred. We need to give everybody options here so that they can know what they like, and then we can get feedback.
Or it's a teaser. I want to know what he's sold. I'm going to wait to the very end. That's actually good business sense there, Matt.
I don't usually do that, but you know what? Today, this is what you get.
All right, let's do it.
So photography. What do you think would be the pressing questions?
Okay, what I asked you before you get into the nitty gritty of that, what I asked you was, I was thinking about those keys. You and I worked on this little project where I just took pictures of keys for you, and it was, and you're like, there's a certain way you want to hold it, and you have amount of time you spend on each one, which obviously time is money in this business. And I was thinking to myself, to what degree do we spend our energy and time on photography, on actually setting this up? I had a friend that was a professional commercial photographer for furniture. He had a studio. One of his big customers was, I think, Crate and Barrel. And when you see those ads for Crate and Barrel, and it's of a room, those are done by professional photographers with special lighting to make it look really good. And so I was thinking, just because we're resellers doesn't mean we don't want, the better it looks, the more someone's going to know what it is and want to buy it, I think. So that's why I was asking that question, because I was really curious. I'm like, How does Matt think about that? How do you set up your listing, and how important is it?
So the photography piece, how you capture the item you're trying to sell, is a really important aspect to do well. Now, I say that before I get into the rest of it. I'll say this: what I'm going to lay out are things that I've done before and what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now, I do because it, to me, is the best I've found so far of the amount of time spent and how it affects how quickly something sells. You can spend more time on photography, you can spend money on equipment and all of that, and you may make your photos even better. But the question is, if you took a professional camera, like a $5,000 digital camera, and you had a light box and you had all this stuff backdrop and you edited the photos before you listed them, and then you put that up against my photo on my iPhone, yours is probably going to be better. But does that translate to any more sales, any quicker sales? That's the question. So with all of the practice that I've done, when I started out, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. I was seeing listings and seeing how people laid things out. And I kind of got pulled in a little bit to wanting to jump in and kind of do what I thought other people were doing, which was get this light box or get a camera. I had a camera that I bought a camera specifically to photograph things. It's the camera that I use if I'm going to be videoing myself now for rusty stuff when I'm sitting at my desk like I'm sitting now. And when I did some of the previous What Sold videos, it was a combination of a screenshot of me, of my computer showing the item, and then I also had a video of me talking. And that was the camera. I now use that camera to video those, and that's all I use it for. I don't use it to photograph items anymore. But early on, I had this digital camera. It probably cost me $300 and some, let's say. And I also bought a light box. The light box is maybe $60 or $70. So I was, upwards of $400 in on equipment to photograph listings. And this is what I found. I would put them in the light box. The light box on the interior was all white. But the stuff that I'm photographing are antiques and vintage items. A lot of times they're deteriorating or they're dirty or they're, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it took me, in 1 week, I already had kind of made a mess inside my light box. It no longer looked clean and I couldn't keep it clean. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
it was kind of a distraction almost of the items I was photographing because it was like nasty. And so that was more upkeep and maintenance. I then started taking, I buy these bags of, I say bags, they're just sort of like paper. It's like crepe paper almost, but like a little thicker, but it's for packing. It's like packing paper. And they come in, 4 by 4 foot squares. So I would pull one of those out and put it in and then photograph. And they're more of like a cream color. They're not white, whatever. It was fine. So I took photos. I did this and that. And I would then have to take my digital camera, either connect it to my desktop or take the little card out, upload all the videos. Okay, now, or all the photos. Now I have them on my desktop. So if I want to make a listing, I am now required to be on my desktop to do it because my photos are on my desktop. If I wanted to be able to do it on my phone and use the eBay app, I would have to hotspot and send the photos from my desktop. So it was like a 2 or 3 step process to getting those things on my phone. That's time. Now, the photos were decent. I had some decent light, but I have one of the newer, it's not the most recent, but like 2 models back iPhone. And you may not have an iPhone. You may have an Android phone. Doesn't matter. Cell phones today have very, very good photographic capabilities.
Yeah,
not even, they're excellent. Not even just with the idea of editing them or making the color better, but they just are really good at capturing things, and they can zoom. iPhones now have 2 or 3 different lenses, and you can do a lot. So I transitioned from that. I already had a cell phone that I use personally, and I've transitioned. Now I do all of my photographing with my phone. It's handy. It's easy. I can photograph things in my what I call the warehouse, which is my office area. I could photograph them upstairs. I can photograph items once I buy them from a thrift store. I can walk them out and take a photograph of them in my car as soon as I bought them. And so it gives me more flexibility and options when it comes to where I take the photographs And how? I can zoom in, I can zoom out, I can use portrait mode if I want on my camera when I'm taking a close-up photo, which essentially focuses up on the item itself and kind of blurs out the background. And that's nice. It makes it more three-dimensional. It kind of makes it pop, and it draws your eyes into the focal point.
Can I, before you go on, Matt, can I say something about the iPhone or the Android cameras? The cameras that are on those phones are so superior to the first digital cameras that even like fifth generation digital cameras of 10 years ago. So if you're listening to this, you're going, I should buy a really expensive camera. You already do have a really expensive camera. It's in your pocket. The phone technology Apple has found that that's probably their most important piece of technology in that phone. So in a sense, don't think of it as like a phone. Think of it as like, yeah, I've got a really high-end camera here that happens to be able to talk to people if I want to or text people.
Exactly.
That's how powerful it is.
Well, and another advantage is that you're not having, if you choose to use your phone, you don't have to spend any money on any other equipment. It's already built into what you carry around with you all the time anyways. And I like that. So it gives me flexibility. I can zoom in. I don't color enhance or do anything to my photos. And the main reason is, let's say I'm trying to sell a sapphire ring, a gold sapphire ring on eBay, and I color enhance that. I run the risk of them getting it and like, it's way more dull than the photo showed. Like, it's not as nice as it may. Yeah, because the photo is not actually representing what it looks like. I made it look better. So I don't do that. I can take a lot of photos. Let's say I have, well, let's just use a recent example. I bought a large collection of carved jade pendants and figurines and things like that. Well, that's great. I had about 210 pieces. I can do all 210 of those in one day. And some people are like, what? I can't even do 50 listings in a week. I hear this all the time. I can't even do 50 in a week. And I'm thinking, why? I mean, if you have 50 items that are all different types of categories from different ages, then that does definitely take more time. But I'll sit down with a bunch of items, and let's say each of these jade artifacts, I'm going to take about 5 to 6 photos of each one. I'm going to take a top and bottom, several side ones, maybe a close-up one, and then last I'm going to take a picture of it next to a measuring tape so people can see the length or the size of it. So that's like 1,000. If I take 5 photos of 200 items, that's 1,000 photos I took. But I have iCloud, I have enough, it's fine. I can take all those photos. Try doing that on a digital camera. You can't hold 1,000 photos on your digital camera in your card, probably. I mean, you're going to have to stop, you're going to have to upload those or whatever else. So I take all of these, since all of those items are the same type of item. I mean, they may be different colors. This might be a figurine, this might be a pendant. But the point is, I can make one listing. The listing is going to be in a category of antique jade carved items, or whatever that category is. I know that every listing is going to be in the same category. So I make one listing. I upload the photos for that one item. I adjust, let's say every title is going to say genuine, antique, carved, jadeite, pendant. That's all of them are going to say that. The only thing that's going to be different is at the end, I'll say green and white, ram or foo dog. And that's that listing. When I'm done with that listing, I'll click a button that says sell similar. It'll copy that listing entirely. The only thing I have to do on my next listing is just change the photos for the next item and change that last bit of the title. And I've made, if I want to, I can change the price if I want to do a different price. But if I'm running them all, say at auction for $20, I don't have to change anything else about that. And then if I do that, it only takes me about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and I've listed 210 items that are going to go on auction. And if I go at that pace all week, you can list 1,000 items or more every week. I mean, can you imagine having an eBay store where you're putting 4,000 items in that store every month? By the end of the year, you've got an enormous volume of items, and you don't have to work that fast. But the point is convenience, lack of having to spend money, and the time, the time savings of using your phone to photograph these items is, I can't say enough about that. It saves a bunch of time. The more items you list, the more you're going to sell. It's just a matter of percentages. If you sell 5% of the items in your store every month and you have 500 items versus you have 5,000 items, you sell more and you make more when you have more.
Yeah, absolutely. The question I guess I would have too is, I think it's a rather obvious question, but maybe it's not. Maybe you can help us out. If I was doing something, so like I think again, my brother who's just selling a couple of items a week, and they're high-end golf items, or let's say the paintings that you've sold, I'm assuming at that point you're going to spend a little bit more time on the photos themselves, as opposed to selling, something where you've got five. So it's a time versus the return on investment is really what I guess I'm asking about.
Sure. Well, a piece of art is going to be likely more valuable than not always, but if it's large, I'm going to have to spend more to box it. I'm going to have to spend more time and effort to package it. And if I've purchased a painting, usually it's because it's a nicer value, it's a higher value item. That's just for me. But when you're trying to figure out what type of photos to take, what you really need to ask yourself is, if you were interested in this item yourself, what are the things you would want to see? Well, with a painting, you want to see the picture itself. You might want to see some close-ups of the canvas to see kind of what the brushstrokes look like. You're going to want to see what the frame looks like. You're going to want to see if it's signed, and if it's signed, a close-up of the signature. And you're going to want to see the back, because you're going to want to know, is the stretcher old? Is it new? Does it have a beveled edge? Is it straight? That will help you determine age, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm going to take more photos of something like that because it's a larger piece. There's more going on there than like a small ring. A ring, I'm going to take like 5 or 6 pictures. I'm going to take a picture of the top, side, bottom, inside. If it has the stamp for the content of the gold or whatever else, or a signature, I take a photo of that. I may take a photo of it on someone's finger. Done. But that's all you really need to see when it comes to a ring. People aren't looking for anything else necessarily. The only difference that I would say that I might do if I was, say, selling exclusively high-end jewelry, for example, something that's really small, is I might invest and do more close-up photos with a digital camera that can zoom in way more than my phone can, and try to, do something with the background a little bit. Because really high-end pieces of jewelry in the thousands are usually, they don't look like they were photographed on someone's dining room table, right? They look like they've been photographed in a studio for a jewelry store. And that's intentional. It gives the appearance or the feeling as though this is legitimate. This is coming from a retail store. Yeah, it says it's used, but does that make sense? It's like the same idea of wearing a white glove and holding it. Like, I see people wearing white gloves and holding like $20 rings, and I'm like, get out of here with the white glove thing. You're not fooling anybody.
Apparently they think they are fooling
Well, they think
somebody.
they are, and so that's fine. Some people are going to be like, well, if it's really high-end, you shouldn't touch it with your fingers. That's fine. I've held enough jewelry. It's not hard to polish silver or gold or platinum. It's very easy to do that.
Very different than if you're holding a book or something that ephemera,
if
you get oil on it.
Yeah, that's true.
That makes perfect sense. I guess the inverse question I would have for you then is this. You just sort of referenced at the beginning, like if I take a picture of something and it ultimately shows up, it doesn't look anything like the picture, it can have a real detrimental effect. To what degree do you think about that when you're taking these photos?
If I think that the photos are going to somehow be misleading in some particular way, if the color is going to look different to them when they get it or whatever else. Now, down here, I've got like these long tube, almost yellowed type lights. They're not super bright. And so that changes the look of color when I take photos down here as opposed to natural sunlight. So I've noticed, for example, when I'm photographing pocket watch chains and fobs, it could be a silver color, but it might come off as like a light yellow color in my photos, or say vice versa. And I don't want them to think they're getting something that they're not. So I'll say, hey, the photos make it look more yellow than it is, or something like that. I'll put a note in the description. Now, not everybody's going to read that, but at least I did my part. If they come back and say, hey, blah, blah, say, hey, did you read the listing? They might say, oh yeah, sorry. They still might want to return it. Like I can't stop them from doing that if they want to, but at least I made an attempt to try to help people understand. I'll also say, if you have any questions, look at the photos. If you have any questions, ask me before bidding or before purchasing. That helps sometimes. Sometimes it just depends on the person, on the buyer.
Okay, so I've got a couple more questions that I'm asking. I would love to say I'm pretending that I know how to do this, and I'm just asking, but I have no idea, and it always frustrates me. And maybe you do know the answer to this. First one is, what do we do with shadows? You're taking a picture of a small item, and oftentimes you end up with a kind of a shadow over the top because you're taking it over the top. And I know you can adjust the camera a little bit, but what do you do about that, or do you even care?
No, that is the number one frustration I have, because all my lights are directly above me in my office where I operate. So I just continue to move side to side, or I try to get out of the way. I'll try to back up and then zoom in so that I'm not covering. I'm like, my body's not over it. If I can't get the right shot, I go to a different spot. I'll go upstairs. I'll try to get in a room where I can put on more lights or get out from behind the light. I might go out on the deck in natural sunlight. Sometimes, like, I want to work at night, let's say, on a particular evening, and I get out some things and I try to start taking photos, and they just don't look good. The colors are all off. I'm getting too many shadows. Sometimes I just have to wait. I just have to go, well, I can't do this tonight. I'm going to have to do a different task.
Are there any tools you can use?
I mean, there probably are editing softwares out there that you can use to like lighten and change contrast and things like that. But to me, I don't mess with that usually. I just try to find a different angle. Sometimes, I'll get out a lamp, or I'll get out a directional light or something. I've got various things at my disposal here, but that's not, I just wiggle around and move around until I can get what seems sufficient. And if I can't, I just keep working at it till I get it.
Yeah. And it sounds like to me that we're going to need to bring on a professional photographer
there you
is
go.
also a reseller, because I know you're out there. So if you're listening and you're a professional photographer / reseller, we would love to have you on the show to talk about these very things. Like, how can we help the average person do a better job on doing their listings?
Yeah.
That would be cool. All right. So the last question I have then is, and this is a weird one, but it always bugs me, and maybe same thing, is reflections. So if you have a piece that's reflective at all, like a painting with a glass thing on there, what do you do about reflections?
It's kind of like what I said a moment ago. Like I will sell things like vanity mirrors from the Victorian era, or compacts that have mirrors in them, or maybe a nice silver tray or something like that. And these have all reflective surfaces. It can be super annoying because I don't necessarily want to photograph something that's going to have a ceiling fan and a reflection in there, or me and my stupid hand, my phone, in it. So I have to try to finagle it, move it around, and it can be very tricky. That's actually a time when you have more shadows or poorer light, it's better to photograph those things because you have less light reflecting in it and causing the issue. So yeah, that's hard. I want to show, like, for example, a mirror that it's not cracked or that it's not super stained or things. If I can't fully get the image that I want, I'll go in and say, hey, it was difficult to get a good shot of the mirror itself, but it's clean, crack free, something like that, so that people know. But yeah, that is annoying. Like sunglasses, eyeglasses, when I'm trying to photograph them. And again, you got me putting my hand up. This goofy
what you don't
guy
realize, Matt, is there's a whole subreddit out there dedicated to finding pictures of you hidden in the pictures of your listings. So they trade them. It's like trading cards out there of Rusty taking pictures of things. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Well, if you have some of those folks and you need signatures to add value to those, you just let me know.
All right. Well, so it sounds like this is like part one of, because I do think that there's something about, number one, what you said about time. So looking at it saying, how much time do I have if I'm selling? It's similar to what I do. There's all sorts of little sounds that come up when you're recording, all sorts, millions of them. And you got to think to yourself, how much I could spend skajillions of hours trying to make it absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
But the truth is, some sounds are okay and some are not. And so you have to kind of figure out, and once you do things for a while, you kind of figure out, oh yeah, this is worth it and this is not, and I could scrub this or I could not scrub that. Same thing goes with those listings. It's like, you're going to know probably after you spend some time. I only know enough to be dangerous because I've done it a little bit with you, but you're going to figure out, okay, I'm spending way too much time on this thing that's going to earn us $4.
At a certain point, it seems as though there are diminishing gains. I can continue doing this work, but at a certain point, I'm losing money as opposed to gaining money.
Right.
If money is for me, and when I'm doing tasks, there are certain tasks that are unnecessary but helpful, and then there are certain ones that are necessary because they directly lead to a sale. And I want to put as much of my effort into the tasks that directly relate to a sale, and less to ones that are superfluous.
Yeah, that would be the word.
That would be it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. It was a good stretch there. I like that.
I just couldn't say it today for some reason.
I know, it's okay. It's, you know what? It's the second show of the year. You're going to have some grace. We're going to have to forgive us. It's been a busy season.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of busy seasons.
Yeah.
At Inverse, he tilted the show on its head. He was what do they call it? A disruptor. He was a disruptor, and I'm thinking this is going to be a good thing. But now we're going to talk about what did you sell in our last few minutes together in the show. What sold?
Yeah, so I'm going to show you 2 or 3 things here. One is this little case, and it is holding a cigarette holder, an antique cigarette holder. It's made of lucite. It's a yellowish mustard color lucite, which is an old plastic, and it has a gold band on it. This is made in England. It says BW. It has some assay marks, and then it says 375, which is 9-carat gold. So this is like a 9-carat rose gold, and it comes in this really cool little container that's got a velvet interior, and it's got like a little snap button that holds it in there. That was cool. I paid $40 for this at an antique store in Asheville a few months ago, and it sold for $90. So not like the 10 time that I want, but I mean, I made after fees and stuff, 30 or 40 bucks.
Wait a second, how old is that?
It's definitely from probably the teens, maybe even the late 1800s.
Because I could see myself with my spats and my fancy suit and my monocle and my stick pins, smoking a cigarette.
A Virginia Slim. You need whatever, like a big long one, right?
I like
into that.
My image of that classic
white gloves.
picture.
You're wearing white gloves as well.
White gloves,
of course, long ones, like driver's gloves that come all the way up to your elbow.
With the spats on the shoes. That's part of the ensemble right there, man. I feel like you should run those by me before you sell them.
And I could put an outfit together for you, my friend.
Oh my God, it would be great.
So another thing that sold is this little pocket watch. This is just for you because I know you love pocket watches.
Oh, I do love pocket watches.
This is I think it's a 20-year case, meaning it's got gold filling on it that supposedly was enough that if you wore it, it would still maintain the gold overlay for 20 years of use. It's a little misleading, though, because on the back, I'll just show you, it's a beautiful, like, porcelain face. It's got Roman numerals as the numbers. But in the back of the case, it actually has the number 18 with a little crest around it, which in most cases would indicate that it was 18 karat solid gold. In this case, it's not. It's gold filled. Now, this sold, I paid $75 for this. It sold for $471 yesterday. I don't know if the person buying it thinks that they're getting something with a solid gold case. I didn't say that it was solid gold, but you could see the 18 on there, and aficionados of pocket watches also probably know. No one asked me, hey, by the way, is this solid gold? They probably didn't want to turn me on to the possibility that it could be solid gold in case I didn't know that it was, if it was. I happen to know it wasn't. I didn't say in the listing it isn't, but no one asked. So here's the deal. I'm hoping the person wanted this for the cool-looking etched. Would be considered a double hunter case because it's etched and designed on both sides. But it's also possible that they'll get it and say, oh, it wasn't quite what I thought, and then send it back to me. But
at
that's
that
always
point,
a
would
risk.
you change the listing to say
not
solid gold?
I would. Yep. Next time I would put it. And I wanted to do that once I had the notion that maybe people are bidding on this because of that. But here's the thing. When you run an auction and as soon as someone bids on it, you cannot edit that auction anymore. And if you wait, let's say you find an error and you want to end the auction or you want to revise it, you can't end the auction when it's like within the last day. The only thing you can do if you end it is that you have to agree to sell it to whoever the highest bidder is at that moment. So even if I wanted to end it so that I could revise it, relist it, I wouldn't be able to do so because it would automatically show up as a sale for the person who had bid on it.
Oh.
So I couldn't revise it. So what I might do before I ship this out is contact the person and say, I've got it already. Thank you for your order. It is a gold-filled case. Just so that you're aware, it is not solid gold. If that's okay with you, if that's what you were expecting, I'll ship it out today. If not, I understand if you need to cancel it. And if they say, yeah, cancel it, I cancel it and I just immediately relist it. But first, I would revise that listing to indicate that.
Yeah, that's wise because then you don't, there's still a chance they could return it, but at least at that point, they know. So they're going to be less likely to return it, I guess.
Yeah. Another thing I sold is this large and heavy. It's probably 10 pounds. It is a bronze statue of a nude woman just sitting in repose.
Yeah,
much like you would expect
as a woman
someone
would do. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is actually a somewhat natural pose. Sometimes you see these ones of women and you think that I know that's supposed to look like women. Like the funniest ones are, the Italian ones where they have women and they always seem to be bare-breasted. Like, what were these women just running around with no shirt on all the time?
Everybody knows you go to Italy,
just
they're just
lounging
bare-breasted.
around. Okay, well,
yeah,
hey,
sure.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it just doesn't seem realistic. Anyhow, this I paid $50 for this at an estate sale. It sold for $107. Honestly, I wish it could have gone for more because it's quite large, it's quite heavy. It's cool. I think the downside of it and why it didn't sell for more is that it isn't signed. So I don't know who the artist is. I did Google Lens. I searched. I couldn't find who it was. I hope this is not a situation like I've experienced before where I sell it and someone's like, oh, that's worth $7,000.
Yeah, that was the Bacchianelli.
Yeah, yeah. It was like some art piece that someone said. I can't verify if what they said is true, but they might have been trolling me or they might have been, who knows?
Wait, is that the Bacchianelli that was lost on the Titanic?
Exactly.
Yes, that would be, you're like, yeah, I knew that. And sure.
Last item I'm going to show here, and I'm doing this specifically because this is going to be a foreshadowing listing
like
here.
A good
so I've got a little baggie here. It's full of about 10 antique wrist watches and small pocket watches, which would be like considered a S or a 0S size in the pocket watch world. But several of these were actually wrist watches, even though they don't have the bands on them. The thing that these all have in common is that none of them are currently operational. They're all very old, and they all are in gold-filled cases. Again, that means there's a very small, solid gold layer on the outside of the base metal. Someone bought this either to scrap the metal and sell it for the gold content. They might take off the cases, sell those for the gold, and then sell the movements again themselves to somebody who wants the pocket watch movements. Or maybe this is someone who fixes these up. Maybe they're doing an art project. I don't know. The point is, these I had slowly collected from different lots. I have basically nothing left in them anymore because I've sold enough items from the lots I bought to pay me back and I'm in the profit. But this baggie sold for $146
Nice.
of these items. And the reason I show this is that in 2 days, I'm going to an estate sale nearby where I will likely be spending thousands of dollars on more watches and watch-related items. This estate sale has the largest quantity of watch-related items I've ever seen at a place. This is the estate of a man who apparently was a lifelong watch repairer. He had a business. And so we're talking hundreds upon hundreds of wristwatches and maybe 1,000 or more unused, still in their original package, bands, metal bands, leather bands, crystals, dials, crowns, stems, everything you can think of for watch repair equipment, different tools. So in addition to that, tons of jewelry. So I had to decide, do I go in one side where I know the jewelry's at to try to buy that, get that stuff first, or do I go to the other side where I know all the watch stuff is at? And I'm going to start with the watches, just so everyone knows. And I've got a plan, and I'm going to run up, try to get as much jewelry as I can as well. But in an upcoming episode or two, we'll probably talk. We could do an entire episode, I'm sure, just on watch-related things.
We're going to.
So that's coming very soon.
That's exciting. I love how you've talked about trying to find ways to get in. Have you been able to see the stuff early? Did they have pictures online? Or
yeah,
this is
what's so cool about it. Because I've made a relationship with this guy from being a longtime customer and I've got to know him, he called me up a couple weeks ago and said, hey, I've got a lot of this stuff. Now, this is the same gentleman that I bought that very large pocket watch collection from. So he knows I'm willing to spend money. He knows what I do. He knows that I know about this category of things. And he called me and said, basically, I could use your help. You know a lot more about this stuff than I do. So I went down and worked with him for about half a day, sorting through a lot of these items, pulling out things that had standalone value because I knew the brand or whatever else, or small lots, putting gold-filled stuff together versus other stuff that was was still functional and working condition versus things that were not. And we made various lots, and he and I and another gentleman priced things and positioned them. So I did that for free. That was just me helping him out. But what it did was it allowed me to know where things are in there, know how they're priced so I can plan and have a strategy. So now I'll get there early so that I'm one of the first people in. I know exactly where to go. He's not cutting the price down for me. It's not like he's selling this out the back door. He still has to sell it, the stuff that he's already photographed and put out for marketing for this sale. But he allowed me sort of an in, so to speak, knowing ahead of time where things are in price. So I can go in, I'm going to spend a lot of money. He's going to make a lot of that. It's just going to further our rapport and our relationship. And this is only half, apparently, in this auction is only half of what he has, both on the jewelry side and the watch side from this person. So in 3 more weeks, he's going to do another one. I'll probably do the same thing, help him out in between and go to that next sale. So the outlook for the month of January starting out is, it's looking pretty bright so far because I might be able to get enough inventory to last me the first quarter of the year.
Well, that's amazing.
Just a listing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all, I mean, that's a perfect example of you being you. People know your persona, but you being a really good, easygoing guy that worked with this guy who brought you in. He had to know that it was a benefit and advantage to you.
Sure.
And it is. And so now you have this.
It was a win-win then, and it'll be a win-win when I come and spend money. And he's not looking, and he says this all the time jokingly, I don't want your money today. I want your money next week and everything. So he's like, He'll do what he needs to do to keep me on. And as long as it is a win for me, I'm going to keep, and he knows I'll keep coming back.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. All right. Well, with that, I love the foreshadowing because we're definitely going to be talking about this thing. But that is all the time we have for today. We've actually run a little long. It's great. It's great to be back with you, Matt. It's great to be on the What Sold podcast. Remember, guys, if you want to email us, just email us at whatsoldpodcast@gmail.com or, write us a review. We've been getting a lot of YouTube reviews. It's quite interesting. And the interesting thing is when people respond to other people, not us, it's quite fun. But anyway. Yeah. So remember to follow, like, subscribe, all those fun things. Otherwise, we will see you with a brand new show next week. Hope you guys have a great first couple weeks of the new year, and we'll talk to you soon.